Your tool doesn't break after mating more than twice? That's impossible, said the Apache beauty.
The sun had barely started its climb over the desert horizon when Jack walked out to his ranch. The air was crisp and dry, carrying the faint smell of sagebrush and dust. His boots crunched against the gravelly soil as he moved past the pens, checking on the cattle and making sure the fences were in order. Life on the ranch was never easy. Every day demanded hard work, patience, and a careful eye. Jack had been raised to respect the land, to know every corner of the property, and to understand the rhythms of animals and nature alike. But even after years of experience, some days felt more challenging than others.
Jack paused near one of the old wooden gates. He ran his hands over the worn handle, feeling the splinters that had formed over years of use.
This gate had given him trouble more times than he could count, yet he had repaired it carefully each time. The tools he carried were his pride, but strong, reliable, and well-maintained, they had never failed him. At least, not until today. As he adjusted the hinges, he noticed movement from the far side of the ranch. A figure was approaching through the early morning light.
It was Aylin, a young Apache woman from a neighboring community.
She had grown up in the desert like Jack, but there was a difference in her presence. She carried herself with a mix of confidence and playfulness, a spark in her eyes that suggested she noticed everything and missed nothing. People in the community often described her as clever and unafraid, someone who could speak her mind without hesitation. Today, however, she seemed particularly curious, her steps quick but measured as she came closer to Jack.
"Good morning," she called out with a friendly but teasing tone. "I see you're already at work trying to tame the wildness of these gates again?"
Jack looked up, slightly surprised but amused.
"Morning, Island. Early yourself."
Figured you'd be sleeping in like the rest of the neighborhood. Alan smiled, brushing a stray strand of hair behind her ear. Sleep is for the weak. Or the unskilled, she said, glancing at the tools in his hands. Her gaze lingered on one in particular, a sturdy wrench he had used for years.
"I have to ask, though," she continued, stepping closer. "Do you really think that old tool of yours can survive more than a couple of tough repairs?"
I've seen things like it break more times than a man can count. Jack raised an eyebrow, a small grin spreading across his face. More than a couple? You're underestimating it. This tool has been through more challenges than anyone could imagine, and it's still going strong.
Island laughed, a sound that carried easily across the quiet ranch.
That's impossible, she said, leaning slightly on the fence. Your tool doesn't break after mating more than twice? That's just ridiculous. Jack chuckled, shaking his head.
Baby, to you it seems impossible. But this isn't about luck. It's about care, knowledge, and a little bit of skill. Care and skill, huh? Island said, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. I like challenges, Jack. I like seeing if people actually live up to their claims.
If you're so sure about your tool, prove it. I want to see it survive a day on my terms, Chris. Jack paused for a moment, studying her expression. There was a mix of humor and seriousness in her tone.
She wasn't just teasing. There was a challenge in her eyes, a test of skill, patience, and perhaps character. He had met people who doubted him before, but there was something different about Aylin.
She seemed unafraid of honesty, unafraid to call out exaggeration, and she demanded the truth of anyone she spoke to.
All right, he said finally, gripping the handle of his tool a little tighter. I accept your challenge, but fair warning. This isn't just about the tool. It's about knowing what you're doing and having patience.
Are you ready for that? Island's grin widened, and she stepped back, giving him space. I'm always ready. Let's see if your tool is as strong as you say it is, and if you are too. The two of them began to walk along the edge of the ranch, moving toward the area Island had in mind for the challenge. It was a part of the property where fences had fallen into disrepair and gates struggled to stay upright. The work would not be easy, and it would require both hands, attention, and endurance. Jack could feel the excitement building inside him. He liked a challenge, and he respected someone who could match his confidence with curiosity and courage.
As they arrived, Jack began to inspect the fence. The wood was weathered, the hinges slightly rusted, and the ground beneath uneven.
This is the perfect test, he muttered to himself, more than to Island. We'll see how much this tool can really handle. Island watched closely, her eyes never leaving his hands as he adjusted the hinges and began repairs. Because she was quiet at first, studying his technique and method, noticing the precision in his movements and the careful attention he gave to every detail. Despite her teasing, it was clear she respected his knowledge and skill. She said finally, breaking her silence. Not bad. But can your tool survive the final push? The real challenge comes when everything is tough, stubborn, and unyielding. Can you handle that? Jack smiled slightly, a hint of determination in his expression. The morning passed quickly, filled with the sounds of wood creaking, tools striking metal, and occasional laughter as Island offered playful commentary. At one point, a particularly stubborn hinge refused to budge, and Jack had to adjust his approach. Island watched with interest, noticing how he remained calm, methodical, and patient. It wasn't just brute strength that solved the problem. It was knowledge, experience, and persistence.
You know, Island said after a while, leaning on the fence and watching him work. I wasn't sure at first, but you handle this with skill.
Maybe your tool really can survive more than a couple of challenges after all. Jack glanced at her, catching the hint of admiration in her voice.
Bane. It's not just the tool, he said. It's about using it right, caring for it, and knowing what it's capable of.
That's the difference. By the time the sun was high in the sky, the repairs were nearly complete. The fence stood firm, the gates swung smoothly, and the tool, Jack's trusted companion, remained unharmed. Island looked at him, genuinely impressed, though she didn't let her expression fully reveal her thoughts. Instead, she smirked, teasing once more. All right, Jack, you've proven something today. But don't think this means I'm completely convinced. The real test isn't over yet. Jack laughed, wiping sweat from his brow. I wouldn't have it any other way. I like a challenge, and I like when someone doesn't take my word for it. Makes the victory sweeter, don't you think? Island nodded, her eyes twinkling. Perhaps, but be ready. Tomorrow brings the real trial. If your tool and your skills hold, maybe then I'll start to believe it truly is as indestructible as you claim. As she turned to leave, Jack watched her walk away, feeling a strange mix of respect and anticipation. There was something about her presence that made even the simple work of repairing fences feel alive with energy and possibility. He realized that this challenge was more than just about a tool. It was about connection, understanding, and perhaps the start of a friendship that neither of them expected. Desk took a deep breath, looking at the sturdy fence and the unwavering tool in his hands. He felt pride, yes, but also a quiet excitement for what tomorrow might bring. In the wide, sun-drenched desert, surrounded by the hard but honest work of the ranch, a small but meaningful story was unfolding. One of skill, challenge, respect, and the kind of bond that can grow when two determined people meet with honesty and curiosity. And so, as the first day of their playful challenge came to a close, Jack couldn't help but smile.
The real adventure was just beginning, and he felt ready for whatever came next.
The next morning, the desert sun rose slowly over the horizon, painting the sky in soft oranges and pinks. Jack was already awake, walking through the ranch with his boots crunching against the gravel, checking the animals and making sure the water troughs were full. Even after years of living on the ranch, there was a certain peace in the early morning hours. Everything felt quiet, alive, and full of possibility. Today, however, was different. Today he had promised Island that he would prove that his tools, and more importantly his skill, could handle whatever challenge she had in mind. Aylin arrived just as Jack was finishing his inspection of the cattle. She walked with confidence, her long braids swinging slightly with each step. Back, she carried a small bag filled with tools of her own, though they were less polished and worn than Jack's. Her eyes sparkled with amusement and curiosity. Morning," she called out as she approached. "Ready to prove yourself today? Or are you going to make excuses?" Jack laughed, shaking his head. "No excuses. I've got my tool, my experience, and enough patience to get through whatever you throw at me. Let's see if you're ready to be impressed." Island smirked and glanced around the property. "Don't get too confident, Jack. The real test isn't just fixing things. It's about solving problems you didn't see coming and doing it without breaking anything or yourself." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Bow. You make it sound dangerous." She laughed softly, the sound carrying across the empty ranch.
"It's only dangerous if you aren't careful."
"But I have faith in your skills. Well, maybe a little." She waved her hand, motioning for him to follow her. "Come on, I'll show you what I have in mind." They walked toward a section of the ranch that had been neglected for months. The fence was leaning, the wooden posts loose, and the ground uneven. There were signs of damage from animals that had pushed through, and the gate was barely hanging on its hinges. It was a mess, but to Jack it was an opportunity. To Island, it was a way to test his confidence and his cleverness. Breaths. "Oh," she said, standing with her hands on her hips. "Here's your challenge. You need to fix this fence, secure the gate, and make sure it can handle anything I throw at it. But there's a catch. You have to do it using only the tools in your bag. No shortcuts. No borrowing from my supplies." Jack nodded. "Fair enough, but why are you so determined to see if I fail?" Aylin laughed. "Beth, I'm not trying to see you fail. I'm trying to see if you're as good as you say you are. Plus, I enjoy watching someone work under pressure. It tells me a lot about their character." Jack studied the fence, noticing the uneven posts and the rusty hinges. He took a deep breath and selected his tool. A strong, well-maintained wrench that had served him well over the years. He adjusted his grip and began tightening bolts and straightening the posts. Aylin moved nearby, observing every movement, occasionally offering small comments. "Breath. You're careful, I'll give you that," she said, her voice light but teasing. "But don't get too comfortable." There's always a part that's tougher than it looks."
Jack smiled. "I've learned that the hard way."
Hours passed as they worked together. Jack focused on repairing the fence and stabilizing the gate, while Aylin occasionally tested his work by leaning against the fence or gently pushing the gate. She was precise, methodical, and unafraid to challenge him. Every time Jack made a small adjustment, she would comment, sometimes teasing, sometimes offering a suggestion. Not bad, but try adjusting that post a little more. It's still wobbly. Jack followed her advice, appreciating her insight. Though she teased him, he could see that she had a sharp eye and an understanding of the land. It wasn't just about tools or skill. It was about observation, patience, and knowing when to make small adjustments. Slowly, the fence began to look sturdy. The posts were straight, the hinges secure, and the gate swung smoothly. "Do you know?" Island said after a while, sitting on a nearby log and wiping dust from her hands. "I wasn't sure you could handle this, but you're proving me wrong." "Your tool really does seem strong, and so does your patience." Jack laughed softly, leaning back on his knees as he wiped sweat from his forehead. "Patience comes with experience, and experience comes with mistakes. Right. Luckily, I've made plenty of both." Island smiled, her eyes softening. "That's what I like about you, Jack. You don't give up even when things seem impossible." "I can respect that." Jack felt a warmth he couldn't explain. There was something about her honesty and directness that made him feel both challenged and understood. She wasn't just teasing for fun. She was testing him, seeing how far he could go, and respecting what she saw. Psst. The afternoon sun grew hotter, and the ranch felt alive with activity. Birds chirped from the nearby trees, and the occasional rustle of the wind stirred the dry leaves. Jack continued to work, carefully adjusting each post, tightening each bolt, and checking the alignment. Island moved around him, sometimes offering commentary, sometimes testing the strength of the fence. She even tried to push the gate open slightly, laughing when it held firm. "Impressive," she said finally, standing back and surveying the fence. "I have to admit I didn't expect it to hold this well." "You've proven your tool and your skill, but the real challenge isn't over yet." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Oh?" "And what's the next challenge?" Aylin's grin widened. "The next challenge is dealing with the unexpected." "Bay, you've done well with what you see. But life, and the ranch, always has surprises. Let's see if you can handle them without losing patience or breaking anything." She led him to a small enclosure where a stubborn calf had been playing and knocking over a post. The animal was restless, curious and strong for its size. Jack approached it carefully, his hands steady and his voice calm. Island watched intently, noticing how he moved slowly and confidently, never showing fear or frustration. "You have to guide it back without forcing it," she said. "Press. Gentle pressure, careful movement, and understanding its behavior. Can you do that?"
Jack nodded, crouching slightly to appear less threatening to the calf.
He spoke softly, his hands moving slowly to guide the animal. At first, the calf resisted, pulling away and testing his patience, but Jack remained calm, adjusting his approach based on the animal's reactions. Slowly, the calf began to follow him, guided by his gentle but firm movements.
Island's eyes widened slightly in surprise. "I didn't think you'd be able to do that so smoothly."
Most people would get frustrated and try to force it. Jack smiled, gently leading the calf back to the enclosure. "Bess, it's about patience, understanding, and knowing when to adjust your approach. You can't rush things, especially living things." By the time the sun began to dip toward the horizon, Jack had completed the repairs, stabilized the fence, and guided the calf safely back to the enclosure. The ranch was quiet again, bathed in golden light. Island stood nearby, her expression a mix of surprise, amusement, and respect. "You've done well today," she said finally. "Bray.
I can see now that your tool and your skill are more than capable. I'm impressed, Jack."
I didn't expect to say that. Jack laughed softly, feeling a mix of pride and relief. I'm glad I could prove myself. But I have to admit, I enjoyed the challenge more than the proving. Island smiled, a softer expression than before. That's the thing about challenges, she said. They show you not only what you can do, but who you really are. And today, you've shown me a lot. For a while, they stood together in silence, watching the sun set over the desert horizon. The colors shifted from gold to deep orange, casting long shadows across the ranch. There was a quiet satisfaction in the air, the kind that comes from a day spent working hard, testing limits, and earning respect. Finally, Island turned to Jack, her playful smile returning. Don't think this is over, she said. Tomorrow, we'll see if you can handle the real test. The one that isn't just about tools or fences. That's when I'll know if your skill and patience are truly unbreakable. Jack nodded, a feeling of anticipation rising within him. I'm ready, he said. Whatever comes next, I'll handle it. As Aylin walked away, Jack watched her go, feeling a strange mix of admiration and curiosity. She was clever, fearless, and determined, and he found himself thinking about her more than he expected. The challenge had been about the ranch, the fence, and the tools, but it had also become about connection, understanding, and respect. Jack looked over his work one last time before heading back to the house. The fence was strong, the gate secure, and his tool remained unharmed. But more importantly, he felt a sense of accomplishment and anticipation. The day had been about proving skill, patience, and resilience. But tomorrow promised something even greater. And so, as the desert sky darkened and the first stars appeared, Jack prepared himself for what was coming. The real challenge awaited, and he was ready to meet it. Not just with his tools, but with his experience, his patience, and a growing respect for the woman who had challenged him every step of the way. The next morning, the sun was just beginning to rise over the desert, casting long, warm shadows across Jack's ranch. The air was crisp and dry, carrying the faint smell of earth and sage. Jack woke early, as he always did, feeling a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation. Today was different. Today was the real test. The challenge Island had hinted at the day before. He didn't know exactly what she had planned, but he could feel that it would be more than just fixing fences or guiding a stubborn calf. This would be a test of skill, patience, and perhaps even trust. Jack walked through the ranch, checking on the animals and making sure everything was in order. His hands were steady, his mind focused, and his heart prepared for the unknown. As he approached the edge of the property, he saw Island waiting for him. She leaned against a post, her arms crossed, and a playful but serious expression on her face. "Morning, Jack," she said, her voice calm but challenging. "Ready for the real test?" Jack nodded. "I think so. But I don't even know what it is yet." "But that's part of the test," Aylin said with a small smile. "Life doesn't always give you instructions or warnings. You have to figure things out as they come, and see if you can handle them without panicking or making mistakes."
Jack smiled. He liked her approach.
It wasn't about luck or brute strength. It was about thinking, observing, and responding carefully. "All right," he said. "I'm ready." Island led him to a part of the ranch that had been left mostly untouched for months. The area was rough, with uneven ground, loose rocks, and a few fallen posts. There was also an old, partially broken pen that had once held some young calves. Bang. Now it was barely standing, and one of the older cows had started using it to scratch herself, making it even weaker.
This is it, Aelin said, standing back and watching him carefully. You need to repair the pen, make it strong enough to hold any animal, and fix the surrounding fence. But there's a catch. You have to deal with the animals while you work.
Brow. They won't always be cooperative. Can you handle that? Jack looked at the pen, and then at the animals nearby. One cow eyed him suspiciously. Another calf nuzzled at the broken wood, and a goat was nibbling on a loose rope. He could feel the challenge rising before him. It wasn't just about skill or tools. It was about patience, observation, and adaptability. I can do it, he said quietly, more to himself than to Aelin. He started by assessing the damage. The posts were loose, some broken, and the old wood had become brittle from months of sun and wind. He selected his trusted wrench, cleaned it off, and began tightening bolts and adjusting hinges. Aelin observed silently, occasionally moving closer to test the fence or gently nudging a post to see if it held. "Not bad," she said finally, "but this is just the start. You need to anticipate how the animals will interact with it while you work. Don't get distracted or frustrated if they don't behave the way you expect." Jack nodded. He knew that was easier said than done.
The animals were unpredictable, and the ground was uneven, making every movement more difficult.
But he stayed calm, adjusting each post, tightening each bolt, and carefully observing the cows and calves as they moved around him. At one point, a young calf wandered too close and nudged a post, causing it to wobble. Jack didn't get angry or flustered. Instead, he gently guided the calf away with calm words and steady hands, then adjusted the post to make it more secure. Bias.
Aelin watched, impressed by his patience and composure. "You're handling them well," she said. "Most people would panic or try to shoo them away. You're learning quickly how to anticipate behavior."
Jack smiled, feeling a quiet satisfaction. He had spent years working with animals, learning their habits and understanding their movements.
Today, all of that experience was being tested, and he was determined to succeed. Hours passed as Jack worked methodically. The pen began to take shape. The posts grew stronger, and the broken fence slowly regained its structure.
Aelin stayed close, occasionally offering advice or testing the stability of a post.
She even tried to challenge him by moving an animal closer, watching to see if he would stay calm and adapt. Jack didn't fail once. He adjusted, guided, and corrected everything with steady hands and a focused mind. Finally, the pen was complete. The wood was reinforced, the bolts tightened, and the surrounding fence was strong enough to hold even the most stubborn animals. The calf that had been wandering earlier now stood safely inside, calm and unharmed. Aelin stepped back, clearly impressed, though she tried not to show it too openly.
"Not bad, Jack,"
she said finally.
"I didn't think you'd handle it so smoothly. Most people would have struggled or given up halfway through."
Jack wiped sweat from his brow, feeling a sense of relief and pride.
"It's not just about strength," he said.
Patience, observation, and knowing how to handle the unexpected. Aelin nodded, her playful expression softening.
Exactly.
And you've proven yourself today. I have to admit, I underestimated you.
Bay. Jack felt a warmth in his chest at her words. It wasn't just pride in his skill, it was respect from someone who clearly knew what she was talking about. Aelin wasn't easy to impress, and earning that acknowledgement felt meaningful. They took a break, sitting on a nearby log and watching the animals interact safely within the newly repaired pen. The sun was high in the sky now, and the ranch was alive with the sounds of the desert, birds singing, wind rustling the leaves. and the occasional low call of a cow.
You know, Island said, breaking the comfortable silence, I enjoy watching people work when they're really tested.
It tells you more than words ever could. I can see how you think, how you handle pressure, and how you respect the animals. Bah.
That's important here. Jack nodded thoughtfully.
It's not just about doing the work. It's about understanding what you're doing and why. If you respect the land and the animals, it makes the job easier and more meaningful. Island smiled, a subtle softness in her eyes.
I like that about you, Jack. Most people don't think like that.
They see the work as a chore, not a challenge or an opportunity to learn. Jack chuckled, feeling a growing connection to her. There was something about her honesty, her curiosity, and her respect for life that made him think differently about his own work. Today wasn't just a test of skill, it was a test of patience, understanding, and trust, best. And he felt proud not just of completing the challenge, but of doing it in a way that honored the land and the animals. As the afternoon turned to evening, Aelin stood and stretched. You've passed the test, Jack. Your tool and your skills have survived the impossible challenge I set for you, Bess. And more importantly, you've shown patience, understanding, and respect. Jack smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment.
I'm glad I could prove myself, but honestly, I think I learned as much from you as you did from me. Watching how you observe, test, and understand everything has been enlightening.
Island's eyes softened, and for a moment, her usual playful expression gave way to genuine admiration. Maybe we've both learned something today, she said quietly.
Not just about tools, fences, or animals, but about ourselves and what we're capable of. They packed up the tools and walked back toward the main ranch together, the warm evening air surrounding them.
Breath. There was a comfortable silence between them now, filled with mutual respect and a shared understanding that today had been more than just a challenge. It had been a meaningful experience. As they reached the house, Aelin looked back at Jack with a small, teasing smile.
Don't think this is the end of the challenges. There's always another test waiting, and the next one might not be so physical.
Be ready for it. Jack laughed softly.
Bah. I'll be ready. Whatever comes next, I'll handle it. With patience, skill, and maybe a little bit of luck.
Good. Because tomorrow, we'll see if you can handle the things you can't predict. That's when I'll know if your strength, patience, and skill are truly unbreakable. Jack watched her walk away, feeling a mixture of anticipation and admiration. He had passed the physical challenge, but he knew the next test would be even more meaningful. One that required thinking, observation, and perhaps even trust. Today had been about proving skill and patience. Tomorrow would be about proving character and resilience. As the stars began to appear in the desert sky, Jack felt ready. He knew the real test was coming, and he was determined to meet it head-on. Not just with his tools, but with his mind, his patience, and the respect he had earned and received from Aelin. The ranch was quiet again, the animals settled, and the work completed. But Jack couldn't stop thinking about the next day, about the challenges he had yet to face, and about the woman who had challenged him every step of the way. It was more than a test of skill now. It was a test of connection, trust, and understanding. And Jack was ready for it, whatever it might be. The morning air was cool, carrying the faint scent of desert flowers and dry earth. Jack woke with a sense of anticipation. Today was the day Aelin had promised would be the true test, not of tools, fences, or animals, but of patience, observation, and character. The sun rose slowly over the horizon, and Jack could feel the quiet energy of the desert settling over the ranch. There was something different about today, something that made him both excited and thoughtful. Jack walked through the ranch, checking the animals and making sure everything was in order. The fences were strong, the gates secure, and the livestock calm after the challenges of the previous days. He ran his hands over his trusted tool, polished and ready. But he knew this time the real challenge wouldn't just be about physical work. It would be about thinking, observing, and responding wisely. Aylin arrived just as Jack finished feeding the animals. She walked with confidence, carrying a small notebook and a few simple tools. Her braids swung lightly with each step, and her eyes sparkled with curiosity and mischief. "Morning, Jack," she said with a playful smile. "Today's the day. The real test. I hope you're ready." Inspiration. Jack smiled. "I'm ready. Whatever it is, I'll handle it." Island's smile grew wider.
We'll see. Follow me.
She led him to a part of the ranch that had been mostly untouched, with uneven ground, scattered rocks, and a few old wooden posts. There were signs of animal activity, but nothing too dangerous. "Here's the challenge," she said, standing with her arms crossed. "You need to navigate this area, fix the old fence, and secure the posts. But there's a catch. You have to do it while I introduce unexpected problems. But animals might move differently. The ground may shift. And you'll have to make decisions without me telling you what to do." "Can you handle that?" Jack nodded. "I can. I'll think, observe, and respond." Island handed him a few small tools and a sturdy rope. "Good," she said. "Then start." Jack approached the first post. It was loose and tilted, but he carefully measured its alignment and drove it firmly into the ground. As he worked, Aylin gently nudged a nearby goat toward him, watching to see how he would react. Jack didn't panic. He calmly guided the goat away, using his body and soft words to keep it calm while continuing to secure the post. "Bears." Island's eyes widened slightly. "Not bad," she murmured. "You're handling the unexpected well. Most people would get flustered, but you're staying focused." Jack smiled, adjusting the next post. He thought about the previous challenges, how he had learned patience, observation, and understanding from Island. Now all of that experience was coming together. He guided the animals, adjusted the fence, and carefully planned each movement.
Hours passed as he moved from post to post.
Occasionally, Aylin introduced small obstacles, a loose rope, a moving calf, or a sudden gust of wind, but Jack remained calm. He solved each problem logically, without frustration or rash decisions. Island moved quietly nearby, observing every action, occasionally taking notes in her small notebook. "You know, Jack," she said after a while, "this isn't just about strength or skill.
It's about character, how you respond when things don't go as planned."
And so far, you're proving yourself." Jack paused and looked at her. "I've learned a lot from the challenges you've given me. Not just about tools or fences, but about patience, observation, and thinking before acting. And I've learned that respect for the land, the animals, and the people around me, is just as important as any skill." Aylin's expression softened, and for a moment her playful teasing was replaced by genuine admiration. "I see that," she said quietly. "You're not just strong or skilled. You're thoughtful, careful, and wise. That's not easy to find." The sun climbed higher in the sky, casting golden light across the ranch. Jack continued his work, moving steadily and methodically. The fence began to look strong and secure, each post firmly planted, and the old wood reinforced with care. Animals moved around him without fear, guided gently and confidently. Aelin watched, occasionally testing his work by applying gentle pressure to posts or nudging an animal toward him. Jack adapted without hesitation, showing patience, calm thinking, and skill. Finally, the work was complete. The fence stood firm, the posts secure, and the area safe for the animals. Aelin stepped back, smiling with approval. "You've done it, Jack," she said. "You've handled every challenge I gave you, expected or unexpected. Your skill, patience, and character have proven themselves." Jack wiped sweat from his brow and smiled. "I couldn't have done it without your guidance and challenges. They taught me to think, observe, and respond carefully, and they made me realize how important patience and respect are." Breaths. Aelin's eyes softened, reflecting a quiet warmth. "I hoped you'd see that," she said. "And I have to admit I've learned from you too. Watching how you handle challenges, animals, and obstacles, it's inspiring." They walked slowly back toward the main ranch together, the desert sun casting long shadows on the ground. There was a comfortable silence between them, filled with mutual respect and understanding. They didn't need words. The experiences of the past few days spoke louder than anything.
"You know," Aelin said finally, "I enjoy giving challenges, but the real joy is seeing how people grow from them. Today, you've grown."
"You've shown patience, skill, and character, and I respect that." Jack nodded. "And I respect you, Bear."
Your challenges weren't easy, but they taught me more than I could have imagined. They weren't just tests of skill. They were tests of patience, observation, and trust.
"And I feel like I've learned a lot about myself along the way." Aelin smiled softly, a rare moment of quiet warmth passing between them.
"We've both learned something important," she said. "Not just about tools, fences, or animals, but about ourselves and each other." The sun dipped lower, painting the desert sky in shades of orange, pink, and purple. Jack and Aelin stood together, watching the colors change and reflecting on the past few days. The ranch was quiet, the animals calm, and the work completed. The challenges had tested skill, patience, and character, and they had both come through stronger and wiser.
"You know," Aelin said after a moment, "the tool that didn't break isn't just a tool.
It's a symbol of resilience. Strength comes from care, attention, and understanding." "And now I think you've proven that, in more ways than one."
Jack smiled, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction.
"It's not just the tool," he said. "It's the work, the care, and the respect we give to everything around us."
"That's what makes it strong and unbreakable."
Aelin nodded, her eyes softening. "Exactly."
"And you've shown me that today." As the first stars appeared in the desert sky, Jack felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. The challenges had been more than physical. They had been a test of patience, observation, respect, and character. And through it all, he had proven not just his skill, but his understanding and resilience. Aelin looked at him, a small, teasing smile returning to her face.
"Don't think the challenges are over," she said. "Life will always bring new tests.
But now, I know you're ready for them, whatever comes your way. Bet I'll be ready, not just with my tools, but with patience, observation, and understanding. And maybe a little bit of luck." Aelin laughed, and for the first time in a long while Jack felt a lightness in his chest. The challenges had been hard, demanding and unexpected, but they had also been meaningful. They had taught him patience, skill, resilience, and respect, and they had shown him the value of guidance, observation, and connection. The desert night settled over the ranch, cool and quiet, filled with the soft sounds of animals resting and the distant whisper of the wind. Jack looked at the stars and felt ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. He had proven himself, not just with tools or fences, but with patience, understanding, and character. And he had earned the respect and admiration of someone he deeply valued. Aelin stood beside him, quiet for a moment, then said softly, "You've done well, Jack. Today I see your strength, not just in what you can do, but in who you are. And that matters more than anything else." But Jack felt a warmth spread through him. "Thank you, Aelin." Breath. "That means more to me than words can say." They stood together for a while longer, watching the stars and the quiet ranch. The challenges had ended, but the lessons and the connection remained. The fence was strong, the animals safe, and the tool had survived everything. But the real achievement was the growth, understanding, and respect they had earned together. As they finally headed toward the house, Jack felt a quiet confidence. The ranch, the animals, the tools, they were all important, but the lessons of patience, observation, resilience, and respect were even more valuable. And he knew that whatever challenges life might bring next, he was ready to meet them with skill, patience, and character, just as he had proven over the past few days.